So you guys probably all know by now, there's a whole bunch of different challenges you can do for Football Manager, right? So like if you want to make the game harder, I guess a little bit easier, you could only sign youth players. You want to make it harder than that, only use youth players that are homegrown. I would argue if you really want to make it hard, you have to sign players that are only 35 and older, or players who are really slow, right? That would make the game really hard. There are saves where you can only sign players who speak a certain language or who are from a very specific part of the world. I mean, all of that is well and good, but there's a specific challenge I haven't seen come up that much that I think is a lot more interesting. And that's this one here. This is the old Millwall challenge from Football Manager games. We'll call this the Millwall Gegen Fouling Challenge because that's kind of what the original poster named this. So this is from FM20. It's amazing that it's already been 4 years since this came about. It's pretty simple. He wanted to turn Millwall into literally a team of thugs. And the idea is that you get players who have very high aggression and some other traits and who are good at winding up opponents, arguing with officials, and doing other things to show their thuggish nature. It's kind of like recreating the 1976 Philadelphia Flyers, but on a football pitch, right? Yeah, if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. It's an interesting challenge for a number of reasons, but first and foremost, for those of you who have been paying attention over the last couple of years, you know that you cannot train aggression, and bravery is almost impossible to train, right? It's very, 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 very difficult to train bravery, and aggression is impossible. If you don't believe me, let me show you here. This comes from Max over at Evidence-Based Football Manager. This is aggression, and when we look through this, what do we see aggression change? No, we don't. Right? You don't see aggression change at all through any of these training schedules for, this is for people who are of a certain age, right? There are probably other spreadsheets we could use as well to show this, but what we know is that no matter what it is that we do, aggression just simply doesn't change. Right? It doesn't change at all one way or another. You can't get rid of it and you can't add it on. In fact, there's a very big debate here, improving their aggression and bravery. There's a big debate here that went on the official forums a couple months ago. They say bravery goes up very slow and aggression doesn't improve. It doesn't improve and it doesn't get lower either, right? They're pretty much natural traits. And it is true that there's very, very little that you can do to influence it, right? I'm not even convinced that the head of youth development has much of an impact on aggression, though it might be something that'd be worth testing out. So, I mean, this is sort of the way that the save worked. He had to go over and he had to sign a lot of these players and try to make it work within the Millwall budget, which itself is quite interesting. He also had to figure out different tricks you can do to get players to develop certain traits, because the traits you were looking for can't be trained, right? The one trait that can be trained is dive into tackles. So every player would train on dives into tackles until he got it. Other traits, well, you have to have mentoring, and this still works, by the way, on FM24, because the mentoring system hasn't changed. You have to have mentoring groups where you have players who have these traits and have them sit in the group together until they learn how to argue with officials, right? And how to, make the opponent upset and stuff like that. Right, so you have to have some good luck and an understanding of how the mentoring system works in order for this challenge to be feasible. The other thing you have to do to make it work is have a good tactic. I argue that in this case, the original poster probably never really had a good tactic. He called it Gegen Fouling because he did a Gegenpress tactic with a lot of fouling and with get stuck in definitely on. You probably want to look at individual player roles and see if there isn't more that you can do to make them a little bit more aggressive when they play. There are probably different things you could do to sort of gamify this based upon tactical testing that's been done. We'll talk about that, I think, a little bit later. But the tactic that you choose would be very, very interesting. I don't really like this shape that much. It'd probably be better with two at the front and maybe with two of these guys a little bit further forward, but, we could play around with that, right? So what happened in the end, there's this list of 13 posts. I'll link to the first one down below so you can check it out in case you haven't read this yet. And if you haven't, you need to go through and read this because it's absolutely crazy. What happened in the end is Millwall was promoted from the championship finally. So they went over into the playoff the first season and lost. They were almost relegated the second season, but somehow the original poster kept his job. Third season, they did a little bit better than the fourth season. They were promoted promoted to the Premier League. In the 5th season, they were relegated, which isn't really that much of a surprise. I don't think that any different type of transfer strategy would have prevented that from happening. It's so common to have that yo-yo effect, as a lot of you know. The stuff here that's interesting, though, you want to keep in mind is look at the number of yellow cards per year, right, from 156 up to the high of 178. And up to 4.5 per game in the Premier League, so they've stayed true to form. The number of red cards went up from 6 to 15 in the end. Number of fouls, as many as almost 1,200 this season, and then fouls per game was almost 30 per game in the Premier League. That's getting stuck in. All right, so that gives you kind of an idea of what you can do. Now, the question is, like, how long could you last doing this, right? Could you do this for a long time? Could you continue to make your ownership think that you actually like know what you're doing and that you're doing it right and all this stuff, right? Or are you going to get fired before you even get into the challenge? So for all of you who are watching this, veterans and new players alike and whatever, here is what the challenge is. See if you're up for it. So the first one is, again, these are the attributes that we looked at as being important to this. Aggression, bravery, and then he looked also at work rate and determination. I'm not so certain about that. There might be other attributes that might help you be more successful in game than like determination. I don't think that determination necessarily is going to make your player more aggressive. I could be wrong. You can let me know it down below. These are the 4 attributes that he used. And as far as player traits are concerned, we have dies in the tackles, which you can train your players on. But the rest, winds up opponents, argues with officials, and gets crowd going, are attributes that are kind of baked into the player. In other words, you'd have to look for players specifically who have these very specific player traits to get them to increase the chance of your side getting yellow cards, red cards, and completely messing the game up, which would be oh so fun to watch. And so that brings us up to the challenge. So the Millwall Gegenfouling challenge is this. Can you recreate the save? Use Millwall. You can actually use any team. It doesn't really matter, right? What you're aiming for is over 1,000 fouls a season, over 150 yellow cards a season, over 10 red cards a season if you can. Chances are you'll get more yellow cards. You might have a hard time with the red cards. And then the big question is, how many seasons can you last as a manager doing this, right? How long will the board let you keep trying? At what point in time are they going to just completely fire you and get rid of you and say this isn't working because you're losing every single match? So that is my challenge for you. Can you recreate this save? Can you recreate the magic? Can you make it happen again? Right? This is, like I said, one of the most really remarkable saves that I've ever seen in Football Manager because it's so different, right? You get so many saves that are really similar, right? We're going to build up this old team. We're going to take this team from nothing and make them into something or whatever. We're going to do it with one hand tied behind our back. But in this case, the goal wasn't even to win. The goal was just to foul. And he did not only a remarkable job of fouling, he actually was promoted in the end, right? Can you do the same thing? That's a big question. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any ideas for tactics that are really aggressive that would be good for this save. Let us know down below. Talk to you later. Bye.